Today we are talking to my good friend Kyle, an entrepreneur who's crushing it on Amazon with his brand Pet Lovers. In 2024, he hit over 8 million in sales and just had his first 1 million month this January. With a team of 9 people, Kyle has built an incredible business. In this conversation, you'll learn how he's built a hiring process that attracts A players, how he keeps his team aligned and motivated, and how he's planning strategically for the long term. I've learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure you will too, so let's dive in. So you started selling on Amazon 8 years ago. In 2024, you hit over 8 million in revenue, and this month in January, you are about to hit your first 1 million month. So let us know how you even started this business.
Yeah, sure. So I first started it 8 years ago back in, it was March when I think the first PO placed, March of 2017. And I was about 20 years old, or actually just about to turn 20 at that time. And I had just $2,000 to my name, and I really didn't have any expectations. Like I thought if we could do 50 units a day, that would be peak. Like that would be the, like the peak of the business, the top, because I think that was what the top seller was doing at the time. And yeah, it just kept growing, but I did brand it intentionally, and I wear the shirt all the time, and I'm pretty open. I have the good fortune to be open about the brand. It's Pet Lovers, because it's not very easy to get into the niche now at this stage. But I love dogs. So a couple of years into the brand, I put my Husky on it, and then I added my Golden Retriever Theo, and they're like the brand mascots. But yeah, it just kept organically growing year after year after year. There was a difficult year a couple of years ago, and without going too much further, I'd say that's a good background.
So your vision likely changed over the years. So what is your plan and what is your vision for the business right now?
Yes, like initially, just being honest, like the vision was just to make money for college. So I didn't have any written down mission, vision, etc. But in the last 2 years, that really, really, really changed. Actually, about maybe a couple months ago, I just updated the mission, vision, and purpose of the company. So the vision now for Pet Lovers is growing pet parents' love for their environments one product at a time, growing love for their environment and pets one product at a time. And that's something that I think when you get to a certain point, which is different for everyone, you really do actually need that vision to keep going. I mean, unless you're just entirely motivated by money, and some people are, and that's fine as well. But I think it gets to a certain point where it's like, okay, we can keep making new products and keep repeating the same process over and over, but it gets quite honestly very boring. So either you sell, or I think have to develop into something that's actually greater.
Nowadays, you have a big team behind you helping you to get to 8 figures. But if we can take a step back and you can tell us about the first employee you hired and when did you make that transition from being a solopreneur to managing people?
Well, thank you. It's very flattering. I wouldn't call 9 people a big team, but it's definitely a lot more than it used to be. And I'm still happy with where we're at. Yeah, the first hire officially was my brother for a little bit. He helped me back in, I want to say it was 2020, like the start of 2020. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like we didn't have any processes. I didn't have any hiring experience. So I just knew I needed help with making shipping plans in the supply chain. So he was actually the first person. And because of that, it didn't really work out. But unofficially, even before that, I had hired a VA maybe like a year and a half in. And I didn't even know what to tell him to do. I just hired a VA because that's what YouTube videos said. So I was just like, yeah, I think I said product research, like do product research for me. And of course, that amounted to nothing because I had no formal, process or training for them or really goals or vision. So eventually, after maybe a couple months, I was just like, yeah, this is kind of a waste of your and my time. And the first probably like significant employee that started was about a year and a half after that in 2021. My good friend, Kevin, who's now our brand manager, the brand and product manager, started working yeah, now he's been here about 3.5 years.
Was it hard for you to let go and basically let someone else to manage the business?
I'd say for me, it wasn't hard in the sense of like, oh, I have to give up this control. It was hard of not knowing how to do it. Like I didn't really know how to properly delegate until, well, I learned a lot from your course, really, in working with you. And that was super, super helpful. And that did bring us a lot of value. So that was the difficulty of just knowing how to do it. But for me, it wasn't ever too hard to let go.
And how do you nowadays decide like which task you still handle personally and which task do you hand over to someone else?
So after hiring Kevin, the brand manager, and having a full-time supply manager, and then having a almost full-time, but not quite seller account and listing manager, the responsibilities are distributed quite well as far as like operations for Amazon. So I'm not really involved in any operations because of how those roles are structured. I still do give input, and how I decide what I'm involved in is usually just by the leverage of the opportunity. So I will still give input, and I'm still paying attention to our advertising strategy because we do spend a large amount and it's so impactful in our business. You know, PPC is probably, I think, that 55% of all of our sales. So on Amazon, that's something that I still pay attention to because it has such an impact on the business. And then I am getting product development updates as each major milestone is hit on a product. So, and then there's one element that I would love to get removed from, and I'm still involved in quite a lot, which is accounting. But we do have a staff accountant working with us about 25 hours a week, but I have meetings we have a very part-time CFO who will do like a monthly review with me, and we're on calls every 2 weeks. And I would like to be removed not from the calls, that's fine, but there's still some bookkeeping that I have to step in on and financial processes and overview that I'm really a big fan of.
I like the way you talk about hiring as removing yourself from operations, from specific processes in the business. But what if we focus on the other side? What would be the ideal role you want to have in the business?
So I'd say the ideal role would be the role I'm in now, which is the creative strategic side. So it'd be taking the data of the business, like here's where our sales at, here's analyzing the market, maybe new opportunities, and then building the strategy and execution around those opportunities and doing that full time, or not quite full time, because I never want to be, for me personally, completely out of what's going on in operations. I shouldn't say never, but let's say not anytime soon. Maybe if we were to, 100x, but I do like keeping a pulse. Let's call it that, like a pulse check on what's going on. But yeah, like an ideal setup would be my involvement in finance and accounting would be a bi-weekly meeting, and I have complete confidence that the books are correct and all that is fine. And then actually on the hiring side, I will say I would love to have someone who takes over the entire hiring process, which I'm working on now with my executive assistant, who also has a huge like HR role, let's say. I'm training her on how to do the hiring process so she can take over 80% of the work and I can just do the interviews, because now I'm still pretty heavily involved in it and it's not something I enjoy very much. Although I love having new people added on, just the process of, profiling someone, job posting, interviewing, big test, all that is kind of draining for me.
Let's take a closer look at your current team. You mentioned that you have 9 people on your team. So can you tell us a bit more about their roles and who is part-time, full-time, and how does it?
Yep, sure. So we have a full-time brand and product manager, and he is handling his 2 main functions, but he does many things, which is why we just hired an assistant role for him. But his 2 core functions at this point are managing our Amazon advertising. So all of our PPC and everything underneath that, sponsored brands, et cetera, in all countries. And we have a couple hundred campaigns and a decent amount of spend each month. So it's quite a lot to manage. And then there's the product development and product launch that he's managing. And then after that, it would be our supply chain manager. He is full-time and he's in charge of pretty straightforward, just the supply chain, managing all the shipments, going to each country and keeping track of all the data and the information that goes along with all of the shipments. And then we have our seller account manager and listing assistant, who is also being trained to help Jackson, because as we've scaled and at any point in time, say we have 30 shipments going to 6 different countries, and we have AWD, so sort of a 3PL, and we have inventory in China. We have 3 different, let's say, channels for our inventory where it's at. It's a bit much even for him at peak times. Most of the year at this stage, he's still fine. So she's being trained to help him in that, but she's managing day-to-day seller support cases, spreadsheets. She's making sales reports for us and assisting the inventory manager with his day-to-day. So after that, we have a new hire who just started, who is the product and brand and product assistant, who's going to take over a lot of the, let's say, the operational work that Kevin is doing within advertising. He will take over managing most of the campaigns, and Kevin will switch from, instead of managing the campaigns 3 times a week and doing the full analysis, to just doing the weekly report and analyzing that, and then telling the product and brand assistant how to manage the campaigns and be more strategic. Because there's now work, same thing. We actually use a AI tool to help manage our PPC, and that's been really helpful. And we use 3 different tools. I'd like to mention that. I don't want to call anyone out, but the first 2 didn't really work out, and we thought 3rd time's a charm. If it didn't work, we were going to hire someone specifically for PPC. But I think it's been a good 9-ish months or more, and it's improved our ROAS a bit. Definitely didn't decrease our results like the other ones did, very clearly. So I think I got you 4 there. And then we have a staff accountant, which I already mentioned, and he just handles the bookkeeping and the monthly financial processes. My executive assistant, who is HR focused, she's focused on helping me with a variety of different tasks, administrative tasks, emails, under planning, all of that. And then we have our sourcing agent, who we've been working with for about 4 or 5 years. And that's usually pretty rare. Most sellers I speak with don't like sourcing agents, but in our experience, she's great. Belle's great. If anyone's interested, not because I'm going to get a referral, I don't do that. I referred her to like 5 different people, and she had offered me a commission, and I just say no, because unless someone's placing a $1 million PO, it would be pretty insignificant. Not to disrespect her offer, but it's, 0.5% of $40,000 is not going to do much. So anyways, after that, we have 7. So we have let's say his title would technically be HR, but he loves the term human capital consultant that we've been working with. He's part-time, but probably about 15 to 20 hours a week. He's been teaching me on how to do hiring and managing people. It's been a big weakness of mine in the past, but he's really helped me improve on a lot. And I want to say, I think I got everyone there.
You mentioned that HR is becoming more and more important as your team is growing. So if you can tell us a bit more about your hiring process and how you find these talented people you then take on your team.
Yeah. So number 1 would be Upwork for the platform. That's worked best for us. We've used Online Jobs, Upwork, and LinkedIn have been the 3 that we've routinely used the most. And I found Upwork to be the most consistent, most easy, and I continue to go back to it because I've had nothing but good results. Well, that's not true. I've had a couple that didn't work out, but probably 90% great overall. And the first step in the process would be to define clearly what we need. And we just look, okay, what are we currently struggling with, or what additional skill set do we need? What is the role? So it's kind of a mix of what we need and then what the role is. Because I found sometimes I'll make a list of like 4 things. It's like, okay, this is what we're needing. But then I don't know, let's say a staff accountant who's like a step up from a bookkeeper, and I think a step down from a full-time accountant, or I can't remember the distinguishment, but I'm not sure of all the responsibilities because I don't have experience, being a CEO of a larger company. So I have to research the role myself and then help fill it out that way. Because they'll be like, oh yeah, we do need that, or I need to learn more about that. So it's a mix of what we actually need and then what the job role is generally. That's step 1. And then number 2 is something called, our human capital consultant calls it ideal candidate profile, where you build on what you need and you kind of write out the traits in the person that would fit this job profile. And then step 3 would be making the job post itself. And based on the ideal candidate profile, it makes the job post a lot easier because you can write like, this is the type of person I'm looking for, and you already defined what you need. So you put it all together there. And what I love about that, which is I know something you've mentioned in your course and in training, which is adding qualifiers within the job post itself. And that's a favorite of mine because I find it's so effective. Just the smallest things that take 30 seconds will weed out like 85% of people. And it's really, really nice to do this. So I recommend that to everyone. And then if they make it through that, we'll look through their profile and see, if it seems like a match. Although generally we're not going to weed anyone out at that stage. It's more like just doing a little bit more investigating, and we'll set up a call with them, a 15-minute call. That's another thing that I love doing. That's something Kevin's been taking over more so recently when it comes to contractors. Actually, like now, if he needs someone for a project that's within product and brand, he'll do that whole process, which is nice. But a lot of times, let's say if I'm hiring someone, our next position is a controller, which is going to be a step up from our staff accountant and give advice on how to budget and spend, where we should be spending money or cutting spend, etc. That's something I still have to do the interviews for. But I like the 15-minute interview because it's a nice preliminary, like just to get a pulse check. Sometimes I found that within 5 minutes, I could see that there's just not alignment, and it's nice instead of like an hour interview, where you just have to sit there for like 50 minutes and it's kind of a waste of time. And I actually asked our consultant about that. I'm sure there's ways you could cut the interview, or there definitely is, but maybe I'm just too polite and I just sat there and did it anyways. So after the interview, then it would be a paid test. And then after the paid test, it would be maybe another interview or just hiring them. Sometimes we do one more, and sometimes we just hire them.
Perfect. So now 9 people on board. How do you manage everyone and hold them accountable?
So it's something that I'm still working on, to be honest. Although we do a pretty good job, I think, for not having a very formal, let's say, management system. We have a weekly business review that we do. And every week we write out what we're going to do for the week and give updates on the week. And that's what it is. And at this stage, we're looking into how to, there's like OKRs, you can set your quarterly targets and all that. And I've tried that. Quite honestly, I myself have struggled with it. We have goals and all that, but I found a lot of times if it's say product development in particular, like, okay, we're going to launch these 4 products, and then there are delays on the development process. You need more iterations, and then it only ends up being 2, but you needed more iterations because the manufacturer couldn't do what you wanted, which is, not playing the blame game, but like it's really out of your control. But I think the answer to that is honestly just having better input-based targets. So instead of, we're going to launch 4 products, like we're going to place 4 POs, and that's really the solution to that.
Do you have some incentive structure for your employees for the short term, some kind of bonuses and the long term, and maybe even like equity in your business if they start for long term?
Yes. So we have equity, and that's actually evolved to be a bit more sophisticated. And the bonuses, I've also given bonuses the last 2 years, but it's just been the first year I did pretty much like 2 to 3, like we had done really well. And I gave like a 2 to 3 month bonus on their salary just based on the overall growth year over year. And then the second year, or most recently, actually, it was 15%. Even though we had done really well, just as the team has scaled, if I were to give, let's say, 30% on everyone's salary, then it'd be a decently large amount for where we're at. So, but now I gave the option to do like half. You could either do all equity, so no cash, or all cash, no equity, or like half. And yeah, that's what I've done most recently.
Since you are no longer involved in the day-to-day operations, what does your typical day look like in terms of?
So recently, in the last couple months, it's been a good amount of meetings, mostly with that human capital development consultant and my assistant, and then analyzing what new variations we should launch, just where to take the business in general. Like a new marketing campaign that we're going to do is we're going to start animating videos. Pretty exciting, using the brand mascots Jax and Dio, and we're going to start using AI to make animated videos. It's quite ambitious, but it's working on the creative, strategic aspects of the business. And a lot of it, though, in the last 2 months in particular, has just been training for new people. There's been a bit of training, like our brand and product manager, although less so in the last couple months. My new assistant, the human capital consultant, quite a lot of meetings, and then process infrastructure of the business itself. I spent probably a couple weeks in the last 3 months revitalizing our ClickUp and shifting around how things are laid out. And yeah, I'd say that's about it.
You managed to successfully remove yourself from the day-to-day operations and focus on your ideal role in the business. And I see a lot of sellers struggling with this. They struggle either with hiring or even just letting go. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who may feel stuck in the solopreneur state?
I would say there's a cliche answer. I forget the exact quote, but it's pretty much no one's going to do it as good as you. Well, I don't think that's actually true. I think you can get people to do things a lot better than you, and that's what the best business owners actually do. But I think if you have that in your mind and kind of accept someone new, chances are, advice for the solopreneur, you're not going to hire someone that's, $100,000 a year in salary with 5 years of experience. So you're probably going to maybe start with a VA in the Philippines and making, X dollars an hour. You're going to have to be patient and willing to invest your time and energy in training them and accepting that initially they're probably not going to do as well as you. I think that's the number one thing to get over that hurdle. And you just have to accept that, or you have to accept, can you pay the money to get someone who's going to immediately be better than you? And those are in my opinion, just your two options.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a wrap. Our next video is the ultimate guide to systemize your Amazon FBA business. It's everything I've learned from working with well over 100 brands. So make sure to watch it now. See you next week. Bye.